Throughout history, nation-states or empires have employed and formed strategies to fight and win wars. The Leica model is an American concept of strategy and consists of a triad of principles, which are ends, ways, and means. Let's start with the ends. Ends are the goals or objectives of a war or military campaign. These goals are usually formed by senior military leaders or staff officers, who consult senior leaders on defining the objectives of what to accomplish in fighting a war. The end state of a war. The ways are the actions, or how a military will fight a war. Examples of ways are waging lightning warfare, deep battle, strategic bombing, or superior firepower. Last is means, which consists of several components and resources, such as logistics, force requirements, and even calculating budgets for a war or campaign. After the capture of Iserlohn Fortress, the Free Planets Alliance gained a forward position base, which is vital to the Galactic Empire's Imperial Navy. The Council on Heinessen had observed the Poles and noticed they fell out of favor with the citizens of the F.P.A. To increase their numbers and stay in power, they decided to launch an ambitious campaign in hopes of bringing the war to an end. By conducting their predictions, their Pole numbers would increase. The F.P.A. Navy was placed in charge of devising a plan for invading the Galactic Empire. Next is to apply Leica's model for the F.P.A.'s military strategy. Let's start with the ends. The Free Planets Alliance plans to invade and strike deep into the heart of the Galactic Empire. The second part of their objective is to win the hearts and minds of the citizens of the Galactic Empire, as well as promoting democracy and overthrowing the Imperial monarchy. Next is the ways. The Free Planets Alliance Navy decided to employ mass, or firepower, and concentrate the majority of its combat power on the front of its formation. Finally, the last piece is means. The Free Planets Alliance Navy's expeditionary forces consisted of 8 fleets, with a total force of 30 million personnel and 200,000 ships. This force is 60% of the F.P.A.'s military forces, and requires an enormous amount of financial resources, as well as food, fuel, and ammunition for the personnel of the expeditionary forces. Another factor is maintenance, having replacement parts for ships, equipment, and aircrafts. This is always crucial when waging a military campaign, because if an aircraft becomes inoperable in combat tools and parts are necessary to conduct repairs. Even some members of the High Council were critical of the use of manpower and financial resources being used for an operation of this scale. Throughout the briefing, there were concerns about the execution of the operation. The first point of concern is the challenge of managing occupied territory and feeding the populace. The Galactic Empire's geography is vast in its size, and has strategic depth, making it difficult to occupy it. It will be difficult to have ground troops occupy each planet and play the role of peacekeepers, as this would require an enormous ground force. This presents a challenge for the F.P.A. to win the hearts and minds of the population. Trying to win hearts and minds is difficult due to some of the civilians perceiving the occupying force as the enemy, or seeing this force as implementing informal imperialism. Another issue is managing the logistics throughout the operation. As more worlds are liberated by the F.P.A. Navy, it will have to feed and provide resources to the populations of these worlds, as well as logistics having to maintain and supply a force of this size and scale. All 30 million personnel need to eat and have uniforms, and tools or parts to maintain their equipment. There's an old saying by Napoleon, "An army marches on its stomach." This leads to the next point, Commodore Falk's employment of the expeditionary fleet. Commodore Falk wanted to deploy the fleet in a long file formation, making it difficult to distribute supplies and material. This leaves the supply lines vulnerable to attacks from enemy forces and puts the operation in jeopardy. More likely, the combat forces will be concentrated toward the front of the formation. Last is the end goal to spread democratic principles to a people who have known a totalitarian government in their upbringing. It is challenging to convert people from one ideology to another. The US military attempted the same strategy in Iraq, Vietnam, and Afghanistan. Let's examine the execution of the operation and its issues. The campaign itself was disastrous for the Free Planets Alliance. First, Fleet Admiral Lohengrin withdrew supplies and resources to make it difficult for the F.P.A. to feed the worlds it occupied or liberated. As the F.P.A. military gained more worlds, it was able to provide aid and food to civilians of the Galactic Empire, which allowed the expeditionary fleet to win over the populace. However, the F.P.A.'s supplies started to dwindle, and Heinesen's High Council received a request for more supplies to the fleets. This was the last opportunity for the High Council to withdraw from the Galactic Empire's territory and reconsider or leverage Isserlon Fortress. Instead, the majority of the High Council members voted to provide additional supplies and continue the military campaign. The F.P.A. forces were low on supplies and were ordered to requisition supplies from the civilians of the newly liberated planets. This caused fighting between both civilians of the Galactic Empire as well as soldiers of the F.P.A. Winning the hearts and minds of the population would come to an end due to the violence inflicted on various planets. The civilian populations no longer welcomed the F.P.A. armed forces as liberators. Admiral Yang's advice was to halt operations on liberating new planets and retreat to meet the supply ships halfway. After receiving reports of unrest, the Fleet Admiral Lohengrin decided to launch a counterattack on the retreating F.P.A. fleets. This was a surprise to the leadership of the F.P.A. Kyrgios's fleet launched an attack on the supply ships, cutting them off from reaching the main fleet. With the loss of those supply ships, the F.P.A.'s military campaign was over. They could no longer bring supplies and aid to the fleets, as well as the civilian population which required food. Admiral Yang was able to survive the annihilation of his remaining fleet, and withdrew back to Isserlon Fortress. The fallout from this failed operation cost the F.P.A. casualties and a loss of financial resources. Heavy losses caused a shortage of men and materials such as warships. Kids in their teens were selected for service, demonstrating how the F.P.A. was desperate to replenish its ranks. As for the political leadership, members of the High Council who voted in favor of the campaign had to resign, thus making way for Trunicht to become chairman of the new council and installing people who supported him in positions of power. One proposal before the operation is to leverage the Isserlon Fortress and get the Galactic Empire to the negotiations table. If the Galactic Empire chooses not to negotiate, Isserlon will create a bottleneck for the Galactic Empire, making it challenging to move into F.P.A. territory. However, the Galactic Empire would later seek an opportunity to acquire military access in Fizan. To conclude, there is an old saying from the art of war: good strategy combined with poor tactics is the slowest route to victory. Good tactics combined with poor strategy is just so much noise before your final defeat, by Sun Tzu. This quote rings true to the problem with the F.P.A. While they faced little resistance and won tactical victories, liberating planet after planet, their strategy was bad and loosely defined. The political leadership put too much stock in attempting to become the liberators and save the citizens of the Galactic Empire. Not to mention, they wanted to destroy the military forces of the Galactic Empire. The result of this campaign ended up costing the F.P.A. a large loss of its military forces, including personnel, ships, aircrafts, and more. Another large loss is the amount of money that was spent on this campaign. But even if it did win, the F.P.A. would incur a large amount of war debt. And how would it conduct stability operations on a vast scale? However, the F.P.A. lost this campaign and became in debt, borrowing large amounts of money from Fizan. Also, the F.P.A. would have to increase its taxes to help pay and replenish its losses from the campaign. Due to the loss of this military campaign, the F.P.A. was not able to recover from this, and they became more reliant on one officer to help defend the alliance against the Galactic Empire. However, the Galactic Empire itself was able to launch an ambitious military campaign and learn some of the lessons from the F.P.A. Comment below if you would like to see a strategic studies video of the military campaign for the F.P.A. What are your thoughts on the campaign? Thank you for watching the video. Ares Academy offers opportunities to learn about anime, video games, and other fictional worlds. If you enjoy these type of videos, like, subscribe, share, and turn on the notification bell to stay tuned for future updates.